My name is Tim Syrianos from RE/MAX Ultimate. I am the broker of record and owner of RE/MAX Ultimate, and I'd like to welcome you today to our workshop titled The Condo Market, What's Next? I'm very excited to actually have an all-star group to introduce today. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll be asking some questions, creating open dialogue, and looking forward to hearing all the answers from them. Now, if you don't mind holding your questions to after our panel discussion, they will stay behind to ask questions. We'll try to finish up before Q2. That way we can have some of the questions voiced over the AV system. So there is no doubt that it's going to be very interesting because I've been trying to stop them from talking outside to share all their ideas here today. I'd like to start off by introducing Farhane Haque. She's Director of Mortgage Advice with TD Canada Trust, a leader in residential real estate mortgages and home equity lines of credit. With over 18 years of lending experience, she is entrusted with the responsibility of offering mortgage advice to help Canadians make informed decisions about home financing and ownership. Farhane and her team draw upon research commissioned by TD Canada Trust, which reveals consumer attitudes and behavior related to home ownership, such as choosing and buying a first home, renovating, and greening a home, as well as understanding gender, regional, and other demographic preferences. They also have access to proprietary research from TD Economics, such as Canadian interest rate forecasts and Canadian housing market insights. In her personal time, Farhane is an active member of community groups, promoting youth education, in particular helping high school students in securing funding to pursue post-secondary education. I'd like to introduce Chris Barkowski, aka for you that know him as Condo Chris. He's a full-time real estate broker with RE/MAX Hallmark and specializes in downtown Toronto. Chris has been a very successful agent, representing many buyers and sellers. However, he's also has a lot of experience in buying, selling, and renting condos in Toronto for over a decade for himself. Chris is a colorful and often controversial video blogger, and you can follow his blog at www.condochris.ca. And Jamie Johnston from RE/MAX Condos Plus. Jamie has been in real estate business for over 30 years. I don't know if you'll applaud for him after he shares what he has to share. I'm just kidding. Prior to acquiring his own brokerage business, Jamie held a variety of executive positions at a national level in real estate operations, franchising, marketing, and relocation. Jamie acquired Stinson Realty Corporation, a pioneer in the Toronto condo market, in October of '98. A year later, Stinson Realty joined RE/MAX and became RE/MAX Condos Plus, that has grown to be the largest resale condominium and loft broker in Toronto in terms of both sales and rentals. It currently operates from 5 retail locations with over 160 agents. In addition to resales, RE/MAX Condos Plus also sells pre-construction condos and has been instrumental in developing the assignment market for condos. And with that, we'll start right away with our first question. And I'd like to ask Chris, as a top agent in the trenches, what is your take on the current condo market right now in downtown Toronto, Chris?
Do you want me to use this? Good.
Yeah, please.
I think it's strong. Prices are up. When I have listings, I see lots of people coming through to look at them. Not all of them are buying, but there's traffic going through. So in my mind, that shows that there's buyers in the wings. When I talk to mortgage brokers that I know, they tell me they've got pre-approvals. And I think one of the more important things driving is, like I was mentioning to these guys earlier, last night I checked District CO1 for freehold homes under 700K. There was only one. There's only one on the market under 700K right now. So if you're a person that's got $400,000 or $500,000 to spend and you want to be downtown, condo's your only option at the moment.
That's great. Jamie, as a broker owner, describe the market in the last 2 months, especially from December going forward.
I think the market is really switched over starting in December. I characterize 2013 in terms of the condo market as being, we were Manhattan North. We had way more rentals than we had sales downtown. Frustrating for our company, and I'm sure for a lot of salespeople out there as well. And I think the switch is certainly flipped over in terms of sales rather than rentals. So I think the market has really exploded. I saw one of our listings that just sold a $2 million penthouse, been on the market for 6 months, and we sold it over the weekend. You're not supposed to be selling these things in January. and there were 2 other buyers that were interested in it as well. And so you just look at what's happening in the market, and you can see an immediate switchover. So I think that the condo market in 2014 is going to be a really strong, a record year.
Thank you. And Farhane, from a financial institution like TD, what kind of stats can you share, and how are you seeing the market right now?
You always send the banker to do the stats, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, so I would say from what we're seeing into Economics sees, we've got 50% of housing starts in GTA in particular are condos, right? So you've got the market and the first-time buyer market in particular that absolutely needs to get into and has the affordability to get into condos, and that's their starting position. And so naturally, you've got the intensification that we're seeing in Toronto around the condo market. What I would say is these buyers tend to be your first-time buyers, so under 35. But we're also seeing an interesting trend on our data, which is the over 65, right? So with the amenities that we see in the condos and the functions and the facilities that these condos offer, not only are we seeing the first-time buyers readily buying into the condo market, but also your boomers actually looking to right-size, as we call it, into the condos as well.
Now, on that comment, I think we also shared about wealth diversification or wealth transfer during life. Could you make a comment on that and what you're seeing from a demographic that way from a financial institution?
Absolutely. So what we are seeing now, and for those that have kids who've gone away and come back, yes, what we're starting to see is many of these parents are now actually transferring wealth ahead of the inheritance and gifting the down payment as they would for their children to actually purchase their first home. Some of these purchases are not necessarily having to be your primary residence, but they're giving their kids a head start, and so we're seeing more and more wealth transfer in the form of gifted down payments.
Thank you very much. Let's talk pre-construction. That's something that is on everybody's mind with so many cranes in the sky. And I'd like to start with Jamie first, if you don't mind. Jamie, where have we been in pre-construction? Where are we now? Where do you see things going?
Well, many of you out there know I haven't been a big supporter of the pre-construction market for the last couple of years. I thought the projects coming on market were too pricey. As a rough rule of thumb, I feel that the differential between the resale and the pre-construction market should be at most $25 a foot premium. And many times developers are trying to charge $100 or more per square foot for pre-construction than was actually taking place in the resale market. All you have to do is look across the street from where we are right now, and there's going to be some real challenges with people that bought in nice condos, for example, who paid way at the top of the market. They paid over $700 a square foot, and I doubt whether they're going to be able to realize that in the next 12 months if they want to resell. So I think the pre-construction market, fewer projects, better price projects. This year there were only about 11 or 12,000 new sales in pre-construction. We think there'll be about 13,000 pre-construction sales next year. If you follow the demographics, we need about 35,000 new units every year between houses and condos in the GTA. We can't deliver enough houses price-wise and in terms of having available land, so the only alternative is condos. We need about 15 to 20,000 new condos just about every year, and construction can't deliver more than about 13 or 14,000 a year. So there is a construction bottleneck. So I am really optimistic about the pre-construction market going forward. Once we work through those 2 years that we had unusually large sales, like 28,000, we're going to take a couple of years to work through that. I think you're almost going to see a shortage of condos, 4 and 5 years out.
So are these pre-construction condos, are they, sticking with Jamie if you don't mind, sorry, I just want to make sure I answer it, are they pre-selling the way they used to? And do you see them continue to pre-sell? Let's talk about promos as well. Are they being offered properly or not? What do you see there? Well,
in terms of promos, free parking, 2 years of no maintenance, All those promos are really related to existing projects that the developer is trying to get over 65% pre-sales so we can get construction going. You don't see any of those promos on brand new projects, and you never will. You have to understand how these new projects are marketed. The premier buyers or investors have to be offered the lowest price in the building. And for the developer to show these investors who buy into his building that they're making money, they keep increasing the price every 6 to 12 months. So after a year, they can proudly tell the investors who bought on day one that the unit is now worth 10% more than what they paid for it. The reality is it isn't, because there isn't any market. But it's a good selling feature. So when you get to the end of the project, there's no way that a developer can cut prices at that point. So the only thing he can do is offer free parking, 2 years no maintenance, lockers, whatever else it is, because he can't cut the price.
For Hani, do you mind if TD chimes in here?
Absolutely. So pre-construction, we're one of the few lenders who'll continue to engage in the builder market with pre-construction, and we do a fantastic job on the CAP programs to support the builder relationships. What I would say on pre-construction, and what we would always recommend that an agent who's specializing in the pre-construction market is to really understand the dynamics of that offer. So numerous times we'll see pre-construction with these incentives, right? So your cars and your vacations, or your cash back toward your down payment. Where the pre-construction value of these gifts does not increase the value of the unit, we actually have to deduct that from the purchase price. And so we run into this quite often, in our sales folks in the field have to really educate the buyer, and we would remind agents who are specializing to also remind their buyers that when you have these offers, it doesn't materially impact the value of the unit. And so we have to absolutely remove that when we're lending, because we have to actually lend purely on the value of the investment. What this has done is actually skewed the perception of the buyer to say, well, my unit is worth the value of the car. Well, it's not, right? So for us, it's become a little bit of an education piece that we're doing quite a bit in the field. But the reality will be, if you're working with a qualified buyer and you're working with a qualified investor, then they typically have the cash to make that deal happen anyway, and so we're okay with that. But yeah, that's something that we see and we want to be careful with.
Thank you very much. Chris, representing your clients, your buyers right now towards pre-construction, do you like them? Do you promote them? Are you somebody who, maybe you can fill us in on your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's funny because earlier Jamie mentioned, and he just mentioned it now, that he thinks that a good pre-construction price should be trading within $25 per square foot above where resale is. And I can remember a day when it was trading below resale, and there was some value there because you had, your money was worth something to lock it up for that long, so there had to be some value. And that's where the investors they were riding that wave up, and that's where a lot of the money was being made. So it goes to show the value that's been put. Like, this is a sub-investment market, the condo market now. It's become an investment market. Assignment sales and assignment trading and all this happening with a product that doesn't even exist yet is just raw speculation. I think that's been driving up the prices for some of the resale. But for me personally, like when I have for example, somebody who actually wants to live somewhere and they're looking to have a nice place to live, or somebody that wants a property that they want to rent out, I can say, hey, I can show you something today that's $25 less per square foot. You can see it, you can touch it and smell it, and you can start paying your mortgage on it tomorrow instead of 3 years from now, and interim occupancy fees. And from a financial perspective, doesn't it make more sense to buy something that's already built today, that you're paying less for, that you're already, by the time you take over this other unit, you may be through the first term, your 5-year term of your mortgage, and be a quarter of the way paid off, as opposed to just starting to pay an interim occupancy fee. So
I mean, even like 3, 4, 5 years later, you might have kids. You never had kids 5 years ago, right?
I mean, the lifestyle change, who knows what's going to, especially for young people like I tend to deal with, I mean, who knows where they're going to be 5 years from now, right?
Well, Chris, you make a great point, because where the interest rates are in terms of the mortgage rates today, is your dollar worth more today than it will be when the interest rates start to rise? And so that's another factor that we would educate our buyers on, to say, if you're investing in this, it's a different paradigm, a different mindset when you're purchasing a condo, as opposed to if you're going to purchase to live, right? So
right.
It's a different conversation depending on the purpose. But yeah, the question comes up, is your dollar worth what it is today 3 years from now?
So I'm going to keep you on the hot seat for Hani. because we're going to talk about assignments right now and how they fit in. Actually, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind having Jamie answer first. The assignment market, Jamie, I know firsthand that you've are very instrumental in this field, and how do you see them fitting in right now?
Well, last year the assignment market died, and I think the primary driver of that was the Revenue Canada ruling that if you did an assignment, it would be treated as income tax and not as a capital gain. So certainly people that were Canadian residents, I think that scared them off right away. A lot of the investors that we represent, we told them that their best bet was to close on the property, rent it for a year, get the HST rebates back, and then when you go to sell it, you'll sell it as a capital gain and not as income tax. So a lot of people took our advice and took the advice of other smart realtors who said the same thing as we did. So I think that was one of the factors that slowed the assignment market. I think the other factor, and I'm going to let Farhani comment on it, is, and I don't know what TD's opinion or their process is on it, is that when you sell an assignment, there are some lenders that will appraise the property at the lower of the appraised value or the price that was paid for the property at the original point in time and not the assignment price. So for example, if you bought a property at $300 and you sold it as an assignment at $400, and a lender said, well, we'll give you 95%, but they're only going to give you 95% of $300,000. So now what does the buyer do? So that's a challenge. Not all lenders. Maybe, Farhani, you'd like to comment about what TD's policy is on, do they finance at the assignment price or do they finance it at the lower of the original purchase price or appraised value?
Absolutely. So assignments, and Jamie, to your point, we used to see a lot of assignments, and of late we don't see as many. And again, it's the tax ruling that changed that for buyers. With assignments, they're messy, right? They're messy for you, they're messy for the lender, and in particular for TD, you know, and I'll speak on behalf of TD and not any other lender, but with assignments, what we had seen in the past is just a superficial agreement, although it was documented on paper between you and me, you being the original buyer, me being the second buyer, and I would say, okay, I'm willing to pay $50,000 more than you paid. You know, here's the purchase and sale agreement between you and I. It was never honored by the builder. So the banks, including TD, smartened up and said, well, no, we actually need it on the builder paper. So what we are now, when we do see an assignment, we ask for it to be actually written on the builder paper. And that's caused the builder to actually create different clauses within their agreements right at the get-go around assignments, right? So that's where you see the fee that the builders will charge to actually change the paper from buyer A to buyer B. And what we do supplement that with is an appraisal. We absolutely need to have an appraisal committed on that deal because, again, a lot could have changed between, you know, the 24 months ago that you bought it and now I'm buying it for you. So we need to be able to support it with current market appraisals. And a lot of this, and I will say this, will be driven by your individual buyer. So it's the strength of the buyer. It's not necessarily just the strength of the actual unit or the value of the unit. It's the strength of the buyer because at the end of the day, whom are we lending to? Right?
Yeah. Chris, are you involved
Quick
in
add-on. No, just before Chris goes, quick add-on. You didn't really answer what the question was from my point of view. I wanted to know
I tried for
whether,
Honey, sorry.
whether if the person paid $300, he sold his assignment at $400, the appraisal was $400. Are you financing on $400 or are you financing on $300? Right? Now, every lender is different. I don't know what TD's policy is.
Right. So I think the short answer is we will lend on current value so long as it's supported. So today, if you're buying it for $400 and we can support that through appraisals, and the buyer can, of course, qualify for it, we'll absolutely lend against that. But we have to be able to validate that through the paper on the builder agreement as well as a current appraisal to show the value.
Thank you. Chris.
How we've got around it is we've told our people if they can't get financing is don't sell it as an assignment. Unfortunately, you're going to have to close it, sell it on the day of registration as a straight resale, and you'll get financing on the resale price. And that's another reason why you've seen a real drop-off on assignment sales.
So as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Jamie, you actually have Schedule A's in your agreements that outlines how to do all that, correct?
Yeah, it's different than, and we have a different process than the AREA form for calculating what the different, the profit and the reimbursement of costs and that. I find when I tried to use the AREA form, even I couldn't get the numbers to work. So we go back to our form, which is, which cross balances.
Thank you. Can I ask Chris a question now, you two, or?
Absolutely. We're done. We're done.
You're looking pretty.
You always look pretty.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie.
Are you involved in any assignments? Like, how do you, when a client comes to you, Chris, and talks about assignments or any opportunities in an assignment market, are you somebody who, do you get a lot of those kind of questions?
I have had a lot of people asking me to assign their condo sales this year, and I generally don't take them, to be honest. It depends. If it was it depends on the client. You know, if I like them, I might, because more than anything, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, there's really nowhere to market it. You know, there's nothing on MLS, so you got to go the old school route where you're putting it on Craigslist or you're doing all kinds of fancy stuff to market it, and I don't think that the clients, you know, usually once I explain that, hey, you know, people are not going to be able to get financing for this, you know, you think you're going to make all this money on top, but you won't, and then you don't get that money right away. You have to wait until the deal closes anyway, so they think they're going to take the down payment and walk away from the deal and it closes today, but they don't get paid out until the end. I say, you know, in the long run, it probably makes more sense just to wait. We'll see how the market goes. I mean, obviously, you can't predict exactly where the market's going to go, but it's been pretty strong. It's a strong market. I mean, when you're selling 3,000, 4,000 condos a month on the market, and even if there's a 10% drop, that's only 400 units. There's still, you know, 3,600 units that sold that month. So even though the media can manipulate those numbers and make it look like the market's crashing when it has a bad month, you know, overall, the market conditions are strong. So it makes sense to wait.
Have your clients seen a ceiling on the cost per square foot? Have they kind of held off on those? Is that the reason why they've held off on those assignment deals and looked for condos that have already been pre-built and up and ready to go? Like you said, touch them, smell them.
Yeah, I mean, I think
them.
a lot of times it comes down to financing too. For that, I mean, we can, you know, the other thing is you can list an assignment sale without. It doesn't leave any history. There's no history, you know. So we could list, you know, okay, it's for sale. It's for sale right now. I put it on Craigslist. You know, we can test the market and see where it's going to go, but it doesn't have the validity that a full MLS listing has. But I would say, you know, even when I ask people to sell resale now, I mean, as far as ceilings, it's really hard when there's no comparables. And I mean, and up until recently, it's you know, if your neighbor sold at 300, you could be pretty sure that you could list at 300 and get that, or at 310, even in some cases. Now, you know, I generally try to recommend that they list slightly lower than the most recent comparable. You know, as opposed to just testing the market, like how high is it going to go, how high is it going to go. I think we have to, you know, figure out a reasonable range for where things are going to trade. You know, and the same for assignments. I just think, you know, you really need a premium buyer if they've got to have their, you know, if they're only going to get $275,000 financing on a $400,000 unit that someone else paid $300,000 for, they need an extra $100,000. And so when you've got $100,000 in your pocket and you're buying condos, you know, the world is your oyster. You know?
And really, you know, you have to understand who is doing these assignment sales, right? So it isn't your first-time buyer who is buying this property to actually occupy this 2 years down the road, right?
They're
So
an investor.
these are your investor buyers, and they typically have the cash to back them in the event that the appraisals or the values come in short.
So based on the investment conversation you just opened up, how does TD finance investment opportunities?
We call them
Condos.
rentals. We call them rentals.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, as you know, with B20 lending guidelines and the OSFI regulatory changes that have occurred in the last 24 months, there's been a lot of tightening around just general lending, and in particular investment lending or rental properties. And so where we do have an investor who's purchased a property to rent, again, we absolutely are in that market. We will lend to 75% of the value of the property, push to 80 on occasion, depending on the covenant of the borrower. So definitely an opportunity. In fact, I would say, of late, and we hear this from our competition, that TD, in fact, has a far more aggressive rental. So what we ask for, if it's your first rental unit, we will ask for 50% of the rental income to be added back to your income to qualify you. And if it's not your first rental and you've got multiple, we work through a rental analysis to make sure that you have sufficient personal income and rental income to continue to support your rental properties.
Okay. Thank you. And let's jump into the luxury market of condos right now. Obviously, we've seen a trend over the last several years with a hotel component in condominium buildings. Is that something, Jamie, that you see as a growing trend? Do you see an interest from clients when you're talking to your sales team at your brokerage of how are those handled generally?
I don't think it's a growing trend at all. I think the reason why we have the condo hotel market, how it got started in the first place, where there were no hotels built in Toronto for 25 years downtown, if you really think back. And builders couldn't get financing to build a brand new hotel because lenders require either pre-sales or leases in place for commercial properties or whatever to finance. If it was an existing hotel, lenders are quite happy to refinance that because they have financial statements. The only way builders could build a hotel was to build it with condos together to create enough pre-sales that they were able to finance the construction of the hotel itself. So if you really look at it, we have about 3 or 4 premium hotels in the market. I don't see that trend going forward. I think the biggest problem with condos attached to hotels is the financing challenge, and I'm sure Farini here is much more knowledgeable about it than I am. Maybe she can talk to the lending rules for condos attached to hotels. I can tell you in the marketplace that most condos tend to sell attached to hotels tend to sell at a discount to the overall condo market. I'm sure you found that out there. The challenge is you need to put more than 5% down, you need at least 20% down, and there are other challenges. So I don't know what TD's policy again is with financing condo hotels.
You didn't tell me this was the hot seat.
Everybody wants to know.
Put her right between two guys there. Isn't that great?
I know. So from the bank's perspective, from TD's perspective, we've financed and we have actually financed the end buyer where the project has been within our risk appetite itself. So we have to really do our legwork on the actual project. So whether it was, One King West or what have you, and we'd have to pre-approve the project before we would engage financing the end buyer. Now, what else? The complexity with hotel, condo, projects is that you've got a transient market in that, right? So you don't necessarily know who your buyer really is or who your tenant really is because, again, it is a pool that you can actually put your unit into and you've got a hotel that's operating and a different business that's operating that rental pool. So that's what creates this complexity for lenders and the banks in particular to really understand, because we lend not just on the property, we lend to the borrower, and not knowing who our borrower is makes it a little bit difficult. So so how do you mitigate that risk, right? Again, you do your homework on the project, or you do your homework and mitigate your risk by creating an equity position that positions you better. So that's when you need the bigger down payment. So that's where our complexity comes in. But do we do them? Yes, with higher down payments, with better qualified buyers, and projects that we absolutely very well know.
Thank you.
Just would like to add a quick point here. You have to differentiate between condo apartment units within a hotel and condo hotel units that are in the hotel rental pool. Okay? Just look at the Trump Tower. There are 2 types of units in the Trump Tower. I had an investor from Ireland phone to tell me that he'd bought these 2 units, and I asked him, and they were in the hotel pool, and he told me he'd paid $1.2 million for each unit. And he asked me, did I think he could get his deposits back? I said no. He asked me what I thought he could get for him. I said, you would be lucky to sell the assignment for $1. Because you have the obligation, and there was cash flow deficiencies with these hotel units. So you have to differentiate between what type of units your investors or your clients are buying, whether it's a pure hotel unit in a hotel rental pool versus an apartment unit. And, you know, I mean, just look at the Soho, for example. There's people there, and, you know, they're not transient renters at all. They're there in 1-2 year leases, and people live there all the time, and there's a hotel component attached to it. But those units, again, sell at a discount to the market, right? Why? Because of the challenges of financing. So, you know, I think what the risk is, and Fareed here probably disagrees with me, I think what the risk is that the lenders are concerned that what happens if the hotel fails, then the owners of the units in the building are responsible for the whole building and all the facilities within the building, and they wonder about the financial strength of the individuals, and they really don't want to take on that risk if they can avoid it. So that's why I think the market for units and condo hotels is much lower. For example, just look at, I'm talking too long, let me pass it off. Just look at the Shangri-La, for example. You know, those units started at $1,000 to $1,200 a foot, am I right? Right? Where are they now? People are trying to get $900 a foot, and they can't sell them, right? No, I disagree with that, because we just sold one conditionally, so I won't get into details, over the weekend there, and it was the lowest price, and it went for $825 a foot on a high floor. So $825 a foot, everyone else is asking $900. And we could have sold more at $825 a foot. So that, to me, is where the market is for the Shangri-La right now. Okay?
I think, Jamie, to your point, it's not necessarily just the transient market, but it's also the type of buyer. So that type of proposition is a very unique proposition to the people who want to live in that type of a building, right? So if we think about it from a risk perspective, and as a lender, when we've got financing against this, are we creating a niche market by allowing, you know, opening up financing against this, because you don't necessarily have a market for that in the future. So 5 years down, are you still going to have the buyers that are actually interested in this lifestyle or in this type of dwelling? And that's what we need to actually assess up front.
Thank you. I'm watching Chris nod his head and shake his head.
I was just gonna say, I think the whole luxury hotel thing in Toronto is a bit of a sham in the first place. I don't see people spending $600 to $800 a night on hotel rooms in Toronto. I mean, maybe if you go to Miami or New York City, but you know, they're bringing that concept here, and we're northern people who are basically, you know, from what I see, we're people moving in from the burbs downtown, or maybe, but we don't have this luxury scene that they're trying to force on us, you know. And I see that. Like, I look at One King West as an example. Beautiful rooms, like a beautiful project. That Sliver is one of the nicest buildings downtown, and the location is great. But they had really beautiful units, and they're trading for, you know, maintenance fees are super, super sky high, but they were trading dirt cheap. For under $300,000, you could get, you know, 600 square feet in the tower there. And I kind of wish I'd bought one, to be honest. But I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see a lot of these units sort of trading at a market minimum.
Thank you. I mean, the other part of this whole panel today is to discuss the opportunity for agents to make some money and how to use the condo market, or folks in the condo market. And Chris, I wouldn't mind you talking first about this. You're obviously in the condo market. You specialize in the condo market. It is a niche. Do you mind sharing, you know, how you started and what advice you can recommend?
Well, as I was saying earlier when we were talking before this meeting, one of the things that I've started doing recently, I mean, a lot of my clients that are in the condo market, you sell them a condo, I sold them a condo, you know, 5, 6, 10 years ago, and now they're moving out and they want to buy houses, so the condo market is not necessarily going to keep you in the condo market. You sort of have to fight to stay in there a little bit. And one of my kind of secrets, I was going to say, is that I've been trying to focus a little bit more on rentals. You know, I mean, if I can wake up in the morning and sit down at my desk, and within an hour or two, I can usually find someone that wants to rent something. You know, whereas you may not be able to sit down and find someone that wants to sell their place or buy their place. And so it's a pain in the ass. I know it's a pain in the ass, but it gets me back out into those buildings, you know, and so I get to go see new buildings and I get to cruise around, and it just sort of, it keeps you busy and it keeps you on the market. And if you know, I can spend 5 or 6 hours with a client after all said and done, or 10 hours, and, you know, I walk away with $1,000 or $1,200, I mean, it's not the same payout as you get for selling a place, but I think, you know, for 10 hours work, it's still a decent hourly wage. So I try not to focus on the money too much, and I focus on, you know, what can I learn, what kind of new buildings can I get into, and, you know, how can I just get out there and be active instead of sitting at home, you know, twiddling my thumbs.
Actually, I wouldn't mind asking Jamie a similar question. What do you advise people who set up their entire business plans on just, for example, pre-construction? Or
yeah, I was just going to add to Chris's comment. I think the other thing that's great, and Chris talked about it in the room, is that renters are great referral people because they're not used to the service levels. You'll get better referrals from renters than you will from people that are buyers. And renters today are certainly going to be buyers in a year or two time. So you have a built-in excuse to phone these people 9 months later and ask them, do they want to stay in the same unit? They want a bigger unit? They want to buy? What do you want to do? So I think it's a great way to build your client database, and that's what this business is all about in the long run. Because if you don't have a client database, you don't have a life, because what you're doing is your business, or you are run by clients phoning you at 4 o'clock to say, show me something at 7 o'clock that night, when you already have other commitments. And you need to reorganize your life such that, and you talk to the top agents, and they'll all tell you that their clients fit into their life schedule, not the reverse way. And the only way you can get there is to have a great client database, not continually relying on brand new business to fuel your business. So just got to reiterate what Chris says there.
And on to the point of an agent's business plan being set up completely on pre-construction, for example, you know, diversifying, what kind of advice would you give an agent when it comes to setting their sights on in the condo market? What should they set their sights on, right?
Here's what I think you need to do. Everybody wants to get new business. Just think about it. Once you've got people in the client database, they're going to stick with you because they like doing business with you. You're going to have them if you do a great job. The challenge for everybody is, how do I get new people? The only way you can get new people or new clients is to niche and to be really, really specific. Because just put yourselves in a buyer or seller's position. I don't know any realtors in the marketplace. I either want to buy or I'm going to sell. What would I do if I don't know any realtors? I would do research and I would find who is the expert for me. Who's the expert for me? So if you hold yourself out as the specialist in the GTA, and I've seen that on lots of business cards, that means you sell everything from Hamilton to Oshawa, and that's 25% of the real estate sold in Canada. So is that really a specialty? No, that's stupidity. So you need to pick a niche. So if you want to be the guy and only get new clients from pre-construction, new construction sales, that's perfect. You want to be the loft guy, you want to be a guy that only does 2 or 3 buildings, and that's where you're going to get your new clients from, but you are going to be the expert there. That's what you need to do. So I think in terms of how you get new clients, you really got to specialize. That's how you're going to get them.
So what you're saying, what I'm listening here or heard, is that you create a niche to create the buzz, to create the leads, and then when they're stuck with, when they're not stuck with you, but when they're when they're working with you, now you're able to expand and have them as clients for life, so to speak, right? But the niche is what creates the actual call.
So if I can just add, your TD mobile mortgage specialist will work with you regardless of your niche, right? So it doesn't matter what you're working, we're working with you.
Nice plug, eh? Isn't that great?
Well, if I can talk about the condo niche, I've branded myself Condo Chris, but it definitely hurts me sometimes when I walk in to sell a house and people say, oh, I know you're the condo guy. Yeah, and I say, well, I sold 10 houses in the last month. I know how to do a home inspection or whatnot, but they don't believe me. They say, well, so-and-so works this neighborhood pretty hard, and you're a condo guy. So it can work against you to be niche.
but that's a new client. That's someone that
Yeah,
doesn't know you.
it is true.
If you had sold them that house, they would be happy to list with
And
you.
I mean, I still go into.
You don't have to justify your condo, Chris.
I still introduce myself as Condo Chris, even if I'm going into a house anyway. I say, yeah, I'm Condo Chris. You know, that's my background.
I think I've called him Condo Chris about 1,000 times. I don't even. It's hard remembering his last name in my head.
Yeah.
You know, so you've done a great job with that, by the way.
Thank you.
Staying on the topic of who is the buyer, like who is your typical buyer, Chris? Demographically, age.
Younger people, women primarily, and if it's couples, then it's usually, I would think, the women in the driver's seat. They tend to be more financially responsible and also more driven towards home ownership, I think. Whereas men tend to, in my mind, be a little like. I mean, I do have great, male investor clients, but when it comes to buying straight up condos, I would say women are driving the market right now.
It's great. So that's another idea of how to target your niche.
Yeah, which is terrible for me because I'm.
Is there an area of the city, and I'm going to ask this of both, starting with Chris first, and then Jamie, and then we're going to go to questions right after. Is there an area of the city that you see up and coming and or flat?
I'm big on the East End right now. I like just sort of east of Yonge, where King meets Queen, and what's happening down there, in Moss Park, Riverdale area. I think that's like sort of becoming a little bit like Queen West sort of used to be before all the condos came. More artsy. So that's where I'm big. And
for a flat? Anything that you see flat where people aren't really?
I think Liberty Village has kind of reached saturation, and same thing with City Place is, even though the numbers are still astounding me, I think Liberty Village is looking pretty tight in there right now.
Thank you very much. Jamie, upcoming and flat.
I would say strong markets. Certainly King and Queen West going farther west right out to the junction. I think that's going to be a growing market. Why? Because I think people are going to be able to. People want to live downtown. Young people want to live downtown. They just have to figure out how they can get the right accommodation. So people, I think, are going to go from condo apartments to condo townhouses to stacked townhouses. They need a little bit more land. I think you're going to find more and more of that out in the junction area. In terms of a market that I don't think is, I think it's perking along, but it's not like the downtown condo market. And I would describe that market as the Etobicoke waterfront. I think the Etobicoke waterfront market isn't built for millennial buyers at all. It's difficult from there, transportation-wise, to get downtown. Try it yourself by public transit. It's 50 minutes virtually, right? It's tough. So that market appeals to an older clientele. It appeals to people that work in 905 and who want to use their car and get out of the city quickly. It appeals to older people that want to go downtown for theater or shows a couple times a week, but not who work 9 to 5 downtown. So we've had a lot of building out there, and the prices out there are pretty flat. So for me, that's sort of the flattest of the condo markets in Toronto.
Thank you. Do you want to make a last comment, Chris, before I?
I was just going to say about the junction. I like the junction, too. That Sterling Road project, a developer bought, there's 30 square kilometers in there on the train tracks that he's bought, and he's planning on building the next Liberty Village. So it's going to start with the Sterling Road lofts there. So if you're going to see, that's like the last place, really, where there's vacant land to build. So there's a good chance in the next 10 years that's going to become the next Liberty Village.
Thank you. Now, before anybody leaves the room or asks any questions, Jamie Johnson was kind enough to print about 200 copies of his market forecast going forward. Obviously, there's more than 200 people in this room. If you go to his blog, you can actually print that from there as well. So if you don't get a copy of it, don't despair. There's a copy online, too. What's the name of your blog there, Jamie? Might as well give you a plug, too.
You can go to our website, remaxcondosplus.com, or Blogging for Condos.
Blogging for Condos is easier to remember. Bloggingforcondos.com, right? And any questions? Thomas.
One of the big challenges I've seen here.
Sorry, do you mind if I?
Run around with the mic?
Can we get somebody with the mic? Thank you.
One of the biggest challenges I've seen this year is I had a lot of condos that were 1 or 1+1s, tinies, and they weren't moving at all. But if someone had a 2-bedroom, there was possibilities of multiples and everything else too. And I think the developers in cities made a huge mistake by not making enough two-bedroom condos for families, like you were saying, who want to move up and stay in whatever the case may be at the West End. Do you find, that's where I find the market being flat. I just want to comment on that. 2 bedrooms versus what's out there right now.
Who would like to answer that? Would you like to, Jamie or Chris?
Well, I don't know that the developer made a mistake because he probably walked away with 300 mil or whatever in his pocket. He doesn't care anymore, right? So they left it to the board of directors to deal with all that stuff. Yeah, it's tough. They're small, right? I mean, I try to look at it from an international perspective. There may not be as many buyers, but you know, if you've got people coming from other places like Hong Kong, for example, where it's natural for a big family to live in a small place. So when you come here and you're going to go to school, you're going to be in 500 square feet is still a decent living space. It's just I think Canadians in general were sort of, from my perspective, my clients kind of have this inflated idea that because they were maybe born and raised in Canada, that they deserve a detached house with a 2-car garage and a white picket fence, and you know, most of us can't afford that kind of thing, right? So I think there's just more Canadians in general, maybe a little bit less realistic for the type of square footage that they can expect to live in. But I think the foreign buyers tend to, you know, are probably going to be the ones that drive that market.
Great.
Interesting observation, though, because from a lender's perspective, we've had a lot of pressure on the banks, in particular TD, to actually decrease the requirements on square footage and bachelor, right? So we've had consumers and our sales force saying to us, no, you actually need to be in that single or no room bachelor, less than 500 square feet dwelling. So it's just, I guess, depending on the flavor of the month or what have you, but we've had a lot of pressure to actually decrease our requirements there.
I've heard some rumor, and Farhani, don't keep the mic, that TD and CMHC has some rules. I actually heard this today again, even though I said no, that it's under 500 square feet you don't finance, or it's not insurable. Is that accurate?
Not that I heard of from CMHC, no.
Okay.
And as I said, we have a lot of pressure on us to actually decrease our requirements below 500 square feet.
Is that your
We're still in the market, yes.
Do you finance under 500 square feet too? Yeah.
Today, our minimum requirement right now today is 500 square feet. So.
Next question. Anyone? Yes, sir. What is your valuation on?
The ICE condominium, the building is coming up. ICE condominium in financial
Yeah.
district. That will stay strong.
The prices there?
Yeah.
Look, I think it's a great location, right? Lots of people want to live there, right? Did you sell in ICE?
Yes.
And what did you pay per square foot?
About 600 and 600 quarter.
Over 600.
Yeah.
So that was what, a lower floor? I don't know.
Yeah. About 10, 11.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of people on high floors paid 700 a foot. You know that. And later on, ask yourself, is that the market? 700 a foot there? Do you think it is? No, I don't think it is. Right? I think people that bought there, they want to get their money out there, are going to have to sit for a couple of years. That's all. You know, the market is not going to crash, right? It really isn't. You know, what I tell people is there's a floor price to condominiums. And what I tell them is if you do the math, Chris just pointed out here that there's nothing under 700, a freehold under $700,000. You can see freeholds in CO1 or downtown selling for over $500 a foot. I see 1,200-foot row houses that need total renovation, and people are asking $600,000. That's $500 a square foot, right? You can get a fully finished high-end condo for $500 a foot, right? So there's a trade-off right there. And we know detached houses are not going down in downtown Toronto. Prices there are going to go up. They're going to go up another 10% this year. One of my top agents said to me what he's dreading about 2014 when I said, it's going to be a spectacular year for real estate in Toronto. He said to me, it is, but I'm dreading having to find a detached property. Not detached, a freehold. Let me make that point clear. Freehold and condos. Those are the only two types of properties that exist. He said, I'm dreading finding a freehold property, like a row house or anything, downtown. There's going to be multiple offers, and they're going to have to go way over list price because there isn't going to be any of those this year.
So it's gonna be a great market in 2014, and make sure you get your piece. That's what I just heard right there.